Hello, everyone. As is quite often the case, as I get ready to record my video podcast like this one, over the last several weeks, in the work that I've been doing with clients, a theme has come up that I think would be helpful for us to, for us to talk through today, or for me to talk through today. So the universe somehow knows that my podcast recordings are coming up and somehow figures out what to throw me by way of helpful examples. So here's what I've got in mind for our time together today. The clients that I've been working with over the last several weeks, and they're in very different industries, okay? Mostly pretty senior people, but, not a lot in common in terms of their, in terms of what their organizations do. But as I was working with these folks, one of the things that I was recognizing was they had the sense that they should be able to engage in any kind of work at any time. Now, what I mean by that is, regardless of sort of time of day, regardless of, sort of how kind of mentally fit they were feeling in that moment, right? Sort of their internal energy levels or mental energy levels, they felt as though, hey, I should be ready to engage with anything at any time. And that got me thinking about one of the core principles in the Getting Things Done methodology, and maybe taking a little bit of a different slant on this core principle. So let me start with the core principle. It's this idea of what we call clean edges. And clean edges, those of you who are familiar with GTD, you'll probably recall that we use this idea of clean edges to describe a best practice in the design of our organizational systems, right? So a good system has clean edges. And what we mean by that is that the things that are to be found in one place in your system share the same meaning. For example, can you, in your organizational system, point out to me, hey, where are the list of things that you need to discuss with the boss the next time you meet with the boss? If the answer is yes, great. That's a good example of clean edges. Can you also show me in your organizational system, where are the things that you're waiting for other people to do for you? Okay. If so, again, great example of clean edges. And again, those of you who are maybe not that familiar with getting things done, I just want to emphasize that the point of this principle, the point of this best practice, is not being tidy. It's not what it's about. What it is about is ensuring that as you make use of your organizational system, as it were, as you pull things off your lists, right? Pick things to do. In those moments, you can be assured of two things, right? Let's imagine, you're in a cab, maybe you're on the train, right? And you say to yourself, hey, I've got a little bit of time, I could engage in something productive. In that moment, what you want to be presented with from your organizational system are only those things you can do in that context, in that moment. So you're on the train, you do not want to be reminded about things that you can only do at home, or you do not want to be reminded about things that have to do with a conversation with one of your direct reports because they're not there, right? So having clean edges in your system means that in those moments, you can be reminded of things that you can do, right? Just show me things that I can, for example, do on my mobile device. And secondly, and equally as important, I would argue, you can very safely ignore everything else. Okay. So again, I'm on the train, on the way somewhere to see a client. And in that moment, I can have the confidence that, yes, I want to see those things I can do on the train, and I can ignore everything else. And that brings with it, I think, a real sense of I'm just going to use the word calm, and I think that's right. Calm in the sense that, hey, I now know that I'm engaged in something that I should be engaged in. This is a good use of my time. Anyway, so I wanted to take that idea, though, and expand on it a little bit. And what I wanted to talk about was this idea of clean edges, but not in terms of the way that our organizational system is put together, but rather in terms of your thinking. So here's what I mean by that. when these people are saying, hey, I ought to be able to do any kind of work at any time, what they're not really recognizing is that we, in my experience, everybody that I've ever run into have been able to do certain things at certain times of the day or the week that they would probably not best engage with at other times of the day or the week. Okay. So, for example, this is where I'm going to bring in the what we call the 5-phase model or the workflow model from getting things done. And those of you who are familiar with the methodology, you'll know this. For those of you that aren't, just a quick summary. We call it the workflow model because what it does is it makes explicit what we do when we're engaged in productive activity. Okay, it's got 5 stages or 5 phases, and they are capture. Okay, gather things that have your attention. Number 2, clarify, make decisions about those things that you have captured. Organize, put the results of those decisions somewhere. Reflect. That gets into, hey, how am I going to best make use of the organizational system that I have? And then finally, engage. What should I choose to do next, in essence? Now, so that model seems to imply that those different types of work are fundamentally or can be considered discrete, right? That they have different natures. And so the point I want to make here is that what I encouraged these clients to do that I was working with was to think about when would it be the best time in your day to, let's say, clarify and organize, right? To be real practical about it, to go through your inbox and make decisions about the emails that are there. And then, to the extent that you want to create reminders of those things for you to do in the future, that those things flow into your organizational system, into the right place in your organizational system. And what was really interesting was that they recognized that this sort of encouraged them to think about when would that be a good thing for me to be focused on, just generally, right, in the course of a day. One client I was working with was saying, I think it's pretty clear to me that first thing in the morning is probably a good time to do that. Okay. So he said, energy levels are high. Emails have come in from overnight. That's a good time for me to do it. Okay. And then he also said, and then at the end of the day is another time for me to do clarifying and organizing. And his sort of sense was, hey, the period in between, probably not a great time for me to be clarifying and organizing. And so he talked about, hey, how can I set expectations amongst the people in my life that this is the time, that I'm going to be doing that kind of work. If they need to get in touch with me, urgently, then probably they want to, DM me or text me or whatever, so that they can be sure that I see their message if it's, let's call it lunchtime. Okay, not in a period when he's likely to be engaged with his inbox. So I guess my advice or my question for you is, what would you say are the right times for you to be engaged in certain kinds of work? If you're going to be doing deep strategic thinking, right? Lots of consideration, lots of focus, ideally not, distracted by other things. When's a really good time for that to be happening in your life? How about clarifying and organizing? How about making decisions about the things that have arrived? Again, they could be emails, they could be WhatsApps, they could be Teams posts if you use, Microsoft Teams. Whatever. When's the right time for that kind of activity in the flow of your day? Okay. And I think if you use this 5-phase model, you can help yourself to be a little bit more deliberate and a little bit more accommodating of your own preferences and your own abilities when it comes to this, when it comes to doing the work that you need to do. And that will hopefully mean that you're more productive and more effective and more efficient. Yes, absolutely. But also that at the same time, you're making space for you. And when I say that, what I mean is you're making space for your own strengths, your own capabilities, your own, biorhythms, right? Whatever it is that you think is important to consider when you choose what to do in the course of a day or the course of a week. I hope that was helpful. I'm going to await with great anticipation what the universe is going to throw me in advance of my next video podcast next time. But in the meantime, please do like and subscribe. And as always, if there's anything else that we can do at Next Action Associates to be of help to you, please do let us know. Bye for now.